Get your filthy hands off my father, Maya. That was the first thing Richard Stone said as the bathroom door slammed so hard, the mirror trembled, and before my brain could catch up, my cheek caught the back of his hand, a hot crack, blood stinging my hairline. Mr. Charles on his knees with a scrub brush, he had begged me to let him hold, and Clara's heels clicking in like judgment, her voice cold enough to fog glass. This is what happens when help gets too comfortable. I stood up because small is a choice I refuse when someone tries to make it for me. I kept my gloves open and my tone level, and I said the only truth that could fit between all that anger and bleach. He asked me to remember who he was before the money. Then I was told to pack now security if I argued. You know what I mean? I walked out, shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of humiliation that feels like a weight on your lungs and in the guest house. I wrote it down like I always do. June 10, fired again, not for what I did, but for what they chose to see. Shadows are easy to accuse when you never look them in the face. I left an envelope on the marble sink because sometimes the only way to be heard in a house like that is to let a camera speak a flash drive one line in my handwriting. You only saw what you wanted, and that night, while the storm shouldered the windows, Richard watched grainy footage of his father walking with a bucket, me trying to stop him. His father waving me off, kneeling by choice, asking for the brush, and me stepping back like a guard at a door called dignity. Guilt is loud in private, quiet in public, so when he called the next morning while I held a cup I couldn't afford to refill, I heard both volumes in his voice. Maya, I was wrong. I saw it. I hit you. I'm sorry. My father trusted you. Please come back. I turned to the window, rain polishing the road, a crow hop walking the curb, like it owned it, and I said, I'll think about it. Because sometimes that is the only power you get, the right to let a man wait. I did go back, but not to forget to make something right, to make rules, east wing, privacy boundaries. And when I saw Mr. Charles in the library, with a blanket over his knees and a book he wasn't reading, he took my hand and said the quiet part out loud. I asked you to witness me, not to serve me. I hoped doing something humbling might crack a door I kept shut too long. He didn't say the name yet, but the house did, because that night I walked into the old study nobody visited, and the rug near the window had a shade shift. Only a caretaker would notice the floorboard, lifted like it had been waiting for a confession, and underneath was a cloth-wrapped bundle, a small ledger, and a photo of young Charles beside a black man with a smile that trusted the future on the back. 1974, me and Jonah, and a card that read, for Charles, if I don't make it back. A note slid under my door before dawn like a draft. They're not done with you. Be careful what you hear at night. Not all walls are kind, and I'll be honest, I was scared, but fear aimed with purpose becomes courage. So I carried the photo to Mr. Charles and asked, "Who is Jonah?" And he finally said it. Voice like paper, but bones like iron. Jonah Davis, my roommate at Stanford, arrested outside a store because a man was scared of his skin, and my father told the sheriff to bury the truth. I stayed silent, and I have been paying interest on that silence my whole life. We called a civil rights lawyer, Tasha Linwood, who didn't flinch at the year, who said, posthumous exonerations are messy, but not impossible. We need originals, we need someone who remembers and will sign their name. And that is how I ended up on the porch of a retired sheriff named Milton Gray, a man with medals on the wall and history in his eyes. And I said Jonah's name, and watched it hit him like a decade he tried to put me off. Then he sat down hard and said, "Your grandfather came to the station, told me to make it disappear the next day, a check for a new roof. I did what I was told." And then he opened a narrow box and handed me a copy of Jonah's original statement, typed, signed, never filed, and I asked him to sign an affidavit to write the truth down, where it could not run. And after a breath that looked like penance, he nodded, "Get me the paper." We took the ledger and the photo and that affidavit and dug deeper into the house, into a cabinet behind encyclopedia volumes nobody touches now, and found a cassette in a soft pouch for Charles. If I don't make it back, and when the engineer slid it into a machine and turned the dial static a pop. Then Jonah's voice came through the years like a hand on your shoulder, steady and clear. "My name is Jonah Davis. I wasn't loitering or stealing. I was breathing in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong skin, Charles. If you hear this, choose the truth, not for me. For the next kid, say my name with strength." Yeah, that happened. And I cried without moving. And Richard stood so still I could hear his guilt settle. And Tasha wrote like ink could keep a promise. Senator Mallister's office took our packet, because sometimes the country gets hungry for the kind of story that cleans a wound instead of covering it. They set a hearing, and that morning Sacramento wore gray like a dress code. The room was packed, the air tight with reporters and ghosts, and when the chair dropped the gavel, I felt my heart knock back. They played the tape to a silence that felt like prayer. Richard spoke and did what money rarely teaches you to do. He took responsibility without a coupon. My family benefited from silence. "I am sorry, we are here for restoration." Then Mr. Charles asked to speak. I wheeled him up. He placed his shaking hands on the podium and chose to be the man he wished he'd been. "Jonah was my brother. I watched him get taken. I chose quiet. Let me give his name back." And after deliberation, the committee said the words that let air into that room: formal exoneration, moving forward, entry into the archive. And I swear the whole building took one breath together like a choir. Back at the house, truth made the floors warmer. Rosa laughed louder. Charles slept deeper. But not everyone rejoiced. Clara tried one last time to win with old tools, dumped a folder of my past on Richard's desk, like paper could unsay a tape: foster homes, a dropped protest charge at 19, community college starts and stops. And Richard read it and closed it and said, "This makes me respect her more," which is the exact sentence that told Clara her hold on the room was over. The board suspended her voting rights. She resigned without a scene. And for the first time, I felt a small, complicated sadness for someone who had invested so much in a currency that loses value. The second truth walks in. We took Mr. Charles to Jonah's grave under a strip of eucalyptus and wind, a small plaque. Almost shy, we brought a second one: "Truth never dies, friend, fighter free." And Mr. Charles pressed his palm to the stone and whispered a thank you that sounded like a release. Then we came home and moved a portrait and framed Jonah's transcript beside the family crest, so the house would have to look at both when it boasted. The weeks after felt like a soft kind of labor. Students writing about Jonah, a mural in town, with his face tilted toward a kinder sky. A partnership with the State Archive to collect stories like his so they don't keep falling through the cracks. We pretend aren't there. I spoke at a conference with my knees knocking and told a room full of suits that justice isn't always loud, sometimes. It whispers for 50 years from under a floorboard until somebody tired enough of silence finally listens. You know what I mean? I planted a young vine near Jonah's stone because roots tell the truth, no matter what you build over them. And Richard asked if I would stay, and I said yes for now, because the work didn't end when the gavel fell. It just started being honest. I know you want a ribbon, a parade, a perfect ending, where every hurt apologizes on cue, but real life almost never pays out that way. So here's where I leave you, in a house that used to run on silence and now hums with names, in a family that finally chose not to bury what it owes, in a country that sometimes remembers how to correct itself in public. And here's the question that keeps my phone buzzing at 2 a.m. Should the truth inside powerful families stay private to protect reputations or belong to the public that lives with the consequences? And what happens to our idea of justice when silence pays better than honesty? Tell me what you think in the comments where you're watching, from what your town does with names like Jonah Hit, like if this hit, you subscribe. If you want the quiet to keep getting a microphone, and if you've ever had to hold a truth alone, share it, because you never know who's waiting for a floorboard to lift.